Conversation now. The South African delegation has wrapped up its meetings at the BRICS Business Forum in Brazil. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has announced a 30% tariff on South African goods starting on the 1st of August. Trump had paused the tariffs for 90 days to allow countries time to negotiate. That pause ends on the 9th of July. On Sunday, Trump also warned that he may impose a 10% tariff on any country that supports BRICS. To help us understand what this means for South Africa, we're in conversation next with Dr. Oscar van Heerden, who is a senior research fellow at the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg. A very good morning to you, Dr. van Heerden. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Yesterday, at the conclusion of the BRICS summit, the president was asked about this possible 10% being imposed on nations that support BRICS or are part of BRICS. What do you read into how the president has responded to that, saying that it must be seen in a positive light, the emergence of centers of power, that you have new players that are also coming into the trade market? What do you read into that?
Good morning, Alden. The president is basically trying to explain that in a global setting where certain countries come together to try and cooperate, to try and have meaningful trade relations that's beneficial to everyone, with mutual respect, how is it then that some external party can necessarily see that as a threat and then decide to weaponize trade through trade tariffs and so on, which is what the United States have been doing? The president is trying to give an impression that it's perplexing because is the United States suggesting that no one can come together and have favorable terms amongst themselves for trade and so on, and that is then seen as a threat to the United States, and therefore punitive action is taken. He says that's not how we do things in the global arena. That's not how you have international relations. But yeah, we see a continuation of the weaponization of trade by the Trump administration.
Yeah, and now we're currently showing on the screen a letter that was addressed to the president of the country from Donald Trump around the 30% tariff hike that will kick in on the 1st of August. And yesterday, once again, the president was asked about this. I just quickly want to play the clip from what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say in response to this, and let's hear what your take is on it.
When we went to the White House, we started a process of engagement. And that process continues. The Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition continues to engage with his counterpart in the United States. And I am hopeful that we will be able to reach an understanding. We've made a clear proposal and offer to them, and they are examining that, and they will come back to us. Whether they are able to do so before Wednesday or soon after Wednesday, we will see. But everything is negotiable. And even timelines that are set are often either negotiable or stretched. So we are hoping for the very best when it comes to that.
Well, the president there saying and still confident that everything is still negotiable. But here is this letter that has now come from Donald Trump around the imposing of this 30% tariff hike. The presidency in their statement also saying that there is still space for negotiation. What should we then read into this? What should the exporters from South Africa who export to the United States, what should their planning be right now?
Alden, the truth of the matter is that the president, understandably so, and his team, Minister Parks Tau and others, Steenhuisen and the likes, they want to keep the door of diplomacy open. But the mistake that they're making, in my opinion, is that they think that they are negotiating with an honest broker, and they are not. The United States is not an honest broker. They have a plan. The plan started with disruption, first and foremost, spreading lies, telling untruths, putting South Africa on the back foot. so that by the time we met with the Trump administration in the Oval Office, we saw theatrics, turn down the lights, play the movie, all theatrics to try and disrupt and to put South Africa on the back foot. And then, as the president says, ultimatums and dates were given. They gave the impression that they are open to negotiations. Indeed, the South Africans put a proposal on the table, and then we get this disingenuous intervention, with the 30% tariff by 1st August. And we see a pattern here from the Trump administration in other matters as well, in global affairs, where he says he's going to take 2 weeks to think about a particular situation in Iran, only to find out that actually he knew that within 2 days they are going to attack Iran. So you're not dealing with an honest broker here. And I think the sooner the South African government accepts this, they are in the firing line. I repeat, Alden, we are the junior partner of BRICS, an easy target. And this is what they are doing. Marco Rubio, Hegseth, and others have targeted South Africa. They want to make an example of South Africa. We see that there is a coordinated attack on South Africa. We see now that there's also a proposed bill that's coming from Florida that is proposing sanctions against South Africa, against direct aid, and against certain individuals within the polity of South Africa. So the sooner the Ramaphosa government realizes that there's a multi-pronged attack on South Africa, the better they can come up with plans to respond to it.
Yeah, because in that letter as well, right at the end of this letter, the president of the US states that these tariffs may be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country. So the United States relationship with South Africa, and how do we characterize that relationship currently, considering what you've said now as well, that the attacks on the country are coordinated?
And that sentence is code for unless you agree to all our terms. You see the alternative, and I really want to talk to the viewers and to Business South Africa, who constantly say we must be on the good side of America. The truth of the matter is America wants us to sell our sovereignty. We have to sell our sovereignty to the highest bidder or to the biggest bully, which is in this case the United States. And it might be that you think that United States is this example of democracy and Western values.
Bastion of democracy.
Bastion of democracy, exactly. But tomorrow we might find ourselves being in an alliance with a country that illegally bombs other countries, that illegally overthrows governments, that illegally attacks other groups and so on and so forth. And that's not the kind of ally that we want to be associated with in the globe. So I think South Africa needs to think very hard and that there is a simple approach to this matter. Unfortunately, we have been put in this position where, one, we will obviously encourage the Ramaphosa administration to do all they can, but the very little room, even the envoy in terms of Jonas has already been snubbed by the United States. They are not interested in intervention and genuine talks and engagement, but we will have to continue to do so because that's what the diplomacy requires. And secondly, we will have to urgently look at alternative markets, look at BRICS countries that can offset that consequence. Yeah.
And as a result, those BRICS countries also have the possibility of a 10% additional to the 30% being imposed. The president of Brazil yesterday saying, Lula da Silva, I don't think it's very responsible or serious for the president of a country as big as the United States to go around threatening the world through the internet. It's not right. The world has changed. We don't want an emperor. But with that said as well, can the BRICS countries set up a trade forum that excludes the United States, considering how powerful the United States is, even within the World Trade Organization?
I think we should forget about the notion of going into global trade without the number one economy in the world. It's a strong economy. Trump knows this. It cannot be ignored. But what Trump has put into motion is a move away from trade with the most advanced economy in the world. I often say it is not the global south that has decided to weaponize the US dollar. It is the United States. It is the United States that weaponized trade by threatening tariffs and sanctions. Now, when you are threatened and when these things are weaponized against you, you have to put in place alternatives. We see, for example, that foreign assets from Russia, Venezuela, and others are frozen because the Americans and the Europeans are in charge of the financial banking system. Now, when you see that, you have to be an idiot not to want to put in place alternatives so that that cannot happen to you, so that you cannot be held ransom with your frozen assets and so forth. So the Global South and BRICS are responding to a situation that has been foisted upon them. And I do think it's not going to be immediate, Alton, but obviously BRICS countries are going to begin to talk to each other and continue the conversation of moving away from the US dollar and moving away from weaponized trade.
Yeah. Finally, on South Africa, again, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, expires on the 30th of September 2025. For South Africa, considering that letter again from Donald Trump, what do you see happen beyond that?
AGOA is already dead. I think the sooner industry accepts it, the better. It's not going to be renewed. It's dead in the water. As he states in the letter, they don't want long-term trade agreements anymore. They want short terms, quick fixes. He wants to have immediate gratification. And the threat is that you do it our way or the highway. And so the ball is now within the Ramaphosa court. Obviously, we want to try and defend and protect the South African industry, the citrus, the automobile sector, the wine and agriculture sector. But when you are dealing with a belligerent partner who only wants to bully, then you need to look at other partners very fast.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Oscar van Heerden there from the Center of African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg.